everybody. Bring it in. Phil, bring it in. Charles? Oh, no, he's on the phone. Okay, I want to introduce to you a fabulous friend of mine. Bring it in. There's comfy seating. You can leave or not leave. Rebecca's not going to hurt your feelings. Stand over here. Do you want to learn about biophilia? And automation in our industry? State-of-the-art automation that could change the world. Rebecca is here, Bullene from Greenery NYC, an amazing biophilic design and landscape company in New York, to talk about the crazy utilizing automation to bring life into the built environment at a lower operational cost. Did you hear that, property managers out there? Here we go, Rebecca.
Yes.
Thanks, Jan.
Rock star.
So that's really what it's all about today, is I think we can all get behind how impactful and beautiful biophilic design is, but I think we also know that the biggest hurdle for most people is the operational cost that comes with it. Once you bring plants into the built environment, someone has to take care of them, and that cost can get very expensive over time. And so one of the things we look at is, what can we utilize technology for to help us reduce the cost of plant care? We're never going to get rid of plant care. Of course, humans are going to have to take care of plants in the built environment, but there's a lot we can utilize to help reduce the cost over time. And I think before we even get into that, I like to sort of start off with just sort of some of the why and sort of why we do these sorts of things. And it's specifically, Stephen Keller was a great thinker in the sphere of biophilic design, and he has a quote that biophilia fosters a repeated and sustained engagement with nature. And I think that is really fundamental to the work of plantscapers, because what we're really trying to do is bring nature into the built environment so that people can have that sustained and repeated engagement. It's not really possible at this point in time to say, oh, you should go take a 20-minute lunch break and, go outside to the park and enjoy, because even if we offer that to people, they're just going to go outside and be on their phones. And so what we really have to do is think about, how are we going to bring nature to where people are, which is inside. And again, the real problem with that is when we start bringing nature inside, we have to take care of it. We have to make sure that it's going to grow and flourish to unlock all those benefits of biophilia. And why is that important? Why is biophilia even important to bring into spaces? There's a lot of reasons. This is my passion, so of course I think it's important, but I really distill it down to two big things. And the first reason why I think biophilic design is so important is that our bond with nature is vital to human wellness. If you were here and you heard Jennifer's talk, you certainly saw a lot of the biological, physiological, psychological things that happen to our bodies when we start engaging with nature. And it really is vital. If we want to think about what we can do for human wellness, for tenant wellness, for employee wellness, nature is one of the very first places we should be looking, because it is really one of the easiest things we can do to make people feel healthier, both psychologically and physically. And the second reason I think biophilic design is so important is that how people feel about their space is one of the biggest factors in how they actually perform and connect with others. If we enjoy being in an environment, we are more relaxed, we're more likely to talk to people, we're more productive in that space. And biophilic design, bringing nature into that environment, can help us create spaces where humans are happier and more productive. And when you think about it from a real estate perspective, our feelings about a space equal dollars, right? How we feel about a space might impact how much time we spend in a cafe, how much time we might spend in a retail environment, how much time we might spend in an amenity space, in a multi-use, environment. So it really has an emotional impact. How we feel about things can really translate to a financial impact, especially for building managers and owners. And I think really, as I said, there's many ways when you look at biophilic design, you can think of, the three typical categories of nature in the space, the natural analogs, the nature of the space, but really nature in the space is the place we can have the biggest impact. It's really, I'm going to say it's, the easiest place to look if you're looking for biophilic design points, but it's also the hardest to do well. And the reason it's hard to do well is that operational cost, right? No matter what you do, once you bring plants in, it's going to cost money to take care of them. And not only that, it takes skill. You have to have professional horticulturists and landscapers coming in to care for those plants. If you try to go out to Home Depot and buy some palms and put them in the lobby, they're not going to be successful, right? So once you think about bringing nature into the built environment, you have to think about, what are we going to do for care for those plants over time? So it can be really challenging to do that. And the thing is, the reality is that it costs money, right? We have to pay people to care for plants. Certainly in New York City, it's really expensive, right? The hourly rate to have a horticulturist come into a building to maintain those plants it can add up to be a huge operational cost. If you're someone like Google or Amazon or someone who has multiple floors, it can be a very, very high cost. And unfortunately, that high cost is often the reason why plants get value engineered out of projects, right? I think everyone's down to bring in tons of plants into the lobby. We want to fill our place. And then you start talking about what that contract looks like year over year. Sure, someone might want to spend $30,000 to bring plants in. They don't want to spend $30,000 a year, every year, in perpetuity to maintain them. And so it just is very expensive to bring nature into the built environment, but that isn't the reason to value engineer out something from the project, because there are things that we can do as an industry, as building owners and managers to help us reduce those costs. And technology is really the answer. I'd say that most plant people are not lovers of technology.
I love technology.
I know you do, Jan. You love technology, but I think most people who really try to embrace and enjoy nature, we're trying to escape technology, right? We generally think of technology as the antidote, or nature as the antidote to technology. And, you know, that can have an impact because we're not so eager to use it. But the reality is technology is coming. And it's already here. And there's so much we can utilize. It doesn't have to impact the quality of the installations or the quality of the work that people do. We can really think about what are the types of technology we can incorporate to actually make the space healthier and happier for humans as well. And so to kind of get into that, I think it's easier to look at a case study, because I could sit up here and tell you all about irrigation systems and grow light systems and all those sorts of things, but it's really easier to talk about a success case. And we have many of these in New York City. And what I want to talk about today is for Turner Construction. So Turner is, you know, one of the largest GCs in North America, huge general contractor, major projects, builds tons of skyscrapers really in New York City and beyond, all around the country. And they engaged us to do a biophilic design charrette with them. So we spent a year talking about what does biophilic design mean in their new headquarters space. And at first, when we first got approached by Turner, I thought that's really interesting, because you don't generally think of a GC as being someone who's very engaged in bringing nature in, right? They're concrete and steel and windows, and how do we build this fast? How do we build it cheap? But as we talked more, they really believe in the benefit of biophilic design because they see that in the buildings, right? And this space in New York City is their headquarters. It's a showroom space. So they want to be able to show other people who are interested in contracting with Turner that not only do they understand biophilic design, but they know how to do it really well, and they can do it for a low operational cost, right? Because that's one of the things you think about at GC, they want the highest quality at the lowest cost. And the way we can do that is through automation. So I'm going to show you just some different examples and some stats about this office. So this is a project we completed for them in 2023. We still maintain it today. We have a team there that's there every week maintaining the plants. Lots of beautiful national analogs. I'll show you some pictures. It's just a really gorgeous office space, a really beautiful building. This is in the Spiral building in New York City. It's a very sort of infamous building in Hudson Yards, new construction. What you can't see from this picture is everything in here is completely automated. So even within this single planter we have here, the basin of that planter has an irrigation tank in it that's refillable. It's all on a timer. No human ever engages with watering with this planter. This is completely automated. So when the horticulture team comes to the space, they're focused on pest management, they're focused on training those vines, they're focused on dusting. All of the sort of real horticultural work is what they're doing. What we're not doing is paying someone to walk around with a watering can. Because I can say that's the job that most horticulturists like the least, and it's also the most expensive part of a maintenance contract, is just paying someone to get from point A to point B with a watering can. And so by investing in technology up front, you can sort of take that part out of the equation, still need to have a professional team there taking care of it, but they're actually focused on making sure that this installation looks its very best week after week. And this is when we really wanted to think about how do we maximize the impact of the plants with a really minimal footprint. New York City real estate, very expensive. They always want to give a lot of space to plants. So we came up with a lot of different concepts for bringing it up. So this picture, for example, a different type of vine trellising system, kind of easy execution. It's airline cable. And we have all different species of plants, which is also really challenging from a horticultural perspective to put in a lot of different plant diversity. Technology can help us with that because we can actually calibrate this watering system so that the Rapidophora on the right gets more water than the pothos all the way to the left. You can get really, really specific with how much water you're delivering to different areas. So here's just some different pictures from the space. So in that top picture, we have one of the green dividers. So that's now an off-the-shelf product. It's a completely automated grow system. So that incorporates its own grow lights. It has its own tank. You can see two of them over here. So no human has to really engage with that other than refilling the tank. That tank is usually enough water to last about 4 to 6 weeks. And so in that system, right, when you have a horticulturist coming to the space, rather than having to fill up the watering can, walking over, watering each individual box, that's all taken care of through technology. So when someone comes into the office, it's a lot less time spent just on the basic care of watering. Some of the other pictures in there, so we have this really beautiful millwork planter in their central cafe. This is another one that you can't see, but that where that piece of wood is on the end of that planter, that's actually on a magnetic clip. That's removable, and at the base of that planter is another tank system. So this is another one that's completely automated. You can see the grow lights there up at the top. That's also on a timer. And that's one of the most amazing things I think about working with plants indoors is there's actually a ratio and equation to water and light. And I'm sure most people who are standing here now know more light for plants equals more water processing. And the less light you give to plants, the less water they process. And there's actually a really amazing equation that happens because nature is just phenomenal and the best designer. So once you start to dial in the volume of light that a plant is receiving, you can actually calibrate the amount of water it needs to receive. And you can set up this beautiful equilibrium that doesn't really shift over time. And as interior scapers, I think one of the things we see over time is that when people are inconsistent with their care, that's when plants start to decline. It's the consistency that the plants really appreciate. And that's one of the beauties of technology. It's always going to be consistent with the amount of water it's providing. And so if you can get consistent with the amount of light that a plant is receiving, you can actually completely dial this in and be very, very hands-off and see unbelievable growth over time. And just some other examples, we have more of those vine cascades. Again, those are totally automated. And what I like to say is I think it's great to use automation where you can on some of these bigger moments. But I also put this picture in here. We have another little coffee station for them that's just beautiful potted plants. So we do have a horticulturist still coming there and watering. But for a client like this, right, they might be paying someone 30 minutes to fill up the watering can in the kitchen, water these plants, and then the rest of the time that they're spending on site, they're really focused on making sure the plants look amazing and there's no pests and everything is dusted. So it's a big cost savings for the customer because we're not spending as much time on site, but it's also a really big cost saving for interior scapers because you have less replacements and you're able to fit more sites in on a day because you're not actually paying people to go around and do the watering part of it. So our techs can actually make a lot more site visits per week because what they're really looking for is when they need to refill the tanks, the basic life support systems of the plant is all taken care of. And that's really one of the biggest benefits of thinking about incorporating technology. And it really comes down to like, how do you do this successfully? Is thinking about this very early in the process. I know Jan is always talking about, we really want to talk to architects really early on. And it's so true, especially with automation, because you have to design with the plants in mind. And if you're thinking about incorporating technology, it's not generally something that you're going to do, the day the building is opening. You really want to talk to the architects and design team to figure out if we need automation or we're interested in thinking about doing that. Maybe we need water lines, or how are we going to access the tank systems? What are the general lighting requirements? And I show these two pictures. So these pictures were taken exactly a year apart. This is at General Electric's headquarters in New York City. And this is exactly the kind of growth you're talking about. This is completely automated. We only visit this site 4 times a year, quarterly. We go there for 2 hours a quarter. That's it, because this is completely dealt with.
So are you taking like a feather duster or something?
Yes, we are.
Like an extender?
Yeah, we set up scaffolding, and that was part of it, because when this design came through, right, this is set at the top of 3-story staircase. So for us to access this, to do hand watering, we'd be setting up a ladder or scaffold every week. Impossible, right? But because we got there early, we were able to get a water line and a floor drain. And so I put in a fertigator here. So I'm injecting nutrients into the water after I filter it, watering that with nutrient-rich water. Any excess can go down into the floor drain. Have really robust grow lights there. So all that life support is just taken care of, right? So the only thing the team is doing is really about the pruning and the dusting. And we have the benefit in this space, we don't allow any outside plants in, so there's never really any pests introduced into the space, which is amazing. So this is really the power of technology, right? Is like, traditionally, you would think this would take unbelievable amounts of time and labor to be able to grow something like that in a year. And it really, I'm telling you, it's like 1 to 2 hours 4 times a year. And it's really because we're just utilizing that technology. And it's not that it's, we can provide a big cost savings to the customer. Because I think if we had told GE, right, this is going to cost you $20,000 a year for us to set up scaffolding and ladders and do all of this, they would have killed it. I would much rather tell them it's going to be $10,000 a year, and now we can do this, and maybe we can do more plants elsewhere in the space. And that's really what it's about, is how do we make bigger, more impactful installations, right? I don't want the budget to be cut. Now all we're left with is like enough to put like one tree at the top of the staircase. We really want to do these large scale, big, impactful things to unlock the benefits of biophilic design. And so I sort of mentioned this earlier, that consistency is so key. And this is one I'm kind of showing you under the hood. So this is obviously Shake Shack's headquarters here. This is another completely automated system here. And opening up that door to the irrigation system, all that crazy copper and black stuff that's in there, all that really is I'm directly taking water, right? It's a municipally fed system. There's a copper line there. I'm putting it through a filter, and then I'm putting it through a pressure regulator, so I'm reducing the amount of pressure, so there's not a lot of water pressure coming out of there. Then I have a fertilization injection system in there, so I'm injecting that water with nutrients, and then I'm feeding it to the planter, right? And even within this planter, I have one main line coming off, and then I have different emitters that I'm pulling for different plants. So I like that because I can calibrate it, because I can tell you the Monstera does not want as much water as the bird of paradise. And so we can actually get really specific, and you can start to open up really big different types of plant palettes because you can calibrate that in, and you're not relying on this subjective human who walks into the space and maybe they had a really bad day, right? And they go in and they're like, I'm just gonna water everything the same, right? And then they walk away. That happens, like we're humans, we have bad days. But technology doesn't have bad days. Technology just knows exactly how many milliliters to give to every specific emitter at a specific time. And I mentioned that earlier, that beautiful ratio that happens. In this particular installation, you can see I have a little grow light up here. This gets no access to natural light. So I know exactly the amount of light that this plant is going to be receiving because I'm in control of it. And so I know that if I set this thing up so it's running for, that grow light's on for 10 hours a day, you can really dial in specifically the exact amount of water that's going to each plant. You can start to track the transpiration rates of plants. And so you can see how fast are they processing that water, and you can really get very specific into how much you're delivering, and you can adjust the nutrient levels depending on how much growth you want. So it's pretty amazing over time, and I can't tell you, all of our sites that utilize automation, the growth is incredible. And not only is the growth incredible, the cost is lower to the building, and our team is happier because they're not spending as much time just lugging around watering cans. They're really focused on horticultural work, ensuring our installations look amazing and that the design is looking gorgeous. This is another example. So this one is built into a staircase, you can see. So this is at a stair. This would have been really challenging to access. And so I'm talking all about the financial benefits of technology, but I also want to get into the idea that it can be a big deal if you want to design an installation that's really hard to access. Because of the reach, no one's going to be long enough to reach and water that plant back there, right? But the design that the architect created is what it is what we have to work with. But by utilizing a tank system, I can deliver water anywhere in this planter. So when you have spaces that are hard to reach or hard to access, thinking about utilizing automation can really help, right? So instead of having to create a path or a way for someone to bring a watering cart in there or something else, you can think about utilizing these tank systems. So what you kind of see in here, it's a refillable tank. So this is not tied into municipal water. So there's really two different ways to think about irrigation, right? One is you're utilizing the building's water source, essentially turning on a faucet. The else is having this tank system that you can refill. The benefit to the tank system is very low threshold for any kind of catastrophic problem, right? So most of these tanks hold anywhere between 4 and 10 gallons. If there ever was an issue, that's like a moppable spill on the floor. So I think one of the big reasons why building owners and managers get a little scared about irrigation is the threat that like, oh my God, it's gonna leak and it's gonna like destroy the building and go through the floors. Tank irrigation is a great solution to that because it's refillable, right? And there's not really an opportunity that we're gonna cause damage to a space. Like I said, it's moppable. 5 gallons of water on the floor is not gonna seep through to the server room below if you're Google. So it's kind of a safety feature that still allows us to get access to the benefits of technology. And so Biotic Instruments is the company that makes the green dividers there, but they also the company that makes a lot of these different life support systems for plants. And I think the goal of this is really to create off-the-shelf products for people, because I think it can be challenging to make a bespoke system every single time. For every single design an architect comes up with, if you're trying to start from scratch and figuring out a different type of irrigation system or how you're going to deliver water and lighting, it can be challenging. So I think one of the big pushes of our industry is how do we create off-the-shelf systems for people to utilize, so that if a designer or a building manager wants to bring plants into a space, they have access to something they can just essentially plug and play. And that's one of the big benefits of the Green Divider, right? Is sort of what we've been talking about. This is a completely autonomous system. I have a Green Divider in my house that has not been touched for 3 years. No human. The only thing that's ever happened is refilling the tank. And that is really powerful when you think about it, because normally a system like that, right, go and have to take care of all of those plants. The only thing I'm ever doing is dusting and doing that pruning. So it really is a huge time savings. And again, you really start to unlock a big benefit of design as well. Because each one of these boxes, specifically in this system, but also with the rest of the tank systems, you can calibrate the water. So you can grow ferns with dracaenas, with monsteras. You can really open up the plant palette, because each of them can have their own specific environmental conditions. And that's usually challenging when you do a mixed planting, right? You want to have all plants that enjoy the same sort of environmental conditions, but this allows us to actually create these little microclimates even within planters, so we can really open up the plant diversity that's available. So the other big part of technology is grow lights, right? And I think when you think about the fundamentals of plant science, right, it's water, light, nutrients. We can handle the water and the nutrients through different types of irrigation systems. The lighting is a whole other part of technology that is really critical to plant health over time. And I think the two biggest takeaways for, when we're thinking about grow lights is that duration of the light and the intensity of the light. There's a lot of really amazing companies coming out with grow lights now that are actually really aesthetically pleasing. I think historically grow lights have been pretty ugly fixtures, but there's a lot of really beautiful fixtures coming out on the market now. And what's really important when you think about grow lights, because there are so many different types of products available, it's what is the type of light that gets provided. So if you see on the far right side, that's a spectrometry report of the sun at noon. So that's the wavelength of the sun. And that's really what you need to mimic with grow lights. So conventional LED lights and fluorescent lights, you can see the kind of peaks and valleys that you get in that. And the difference between when someone says like, oh, it's just a full spectrum LED, realize you're going to get those peaks and valleys. Grow lights are specific because they give you the entire wavelength. So when you're thinking about incorporating grow lights into something, it's really important to understand that spectrometry and look at those reports to make sure you're getting a really even spread of lighting across, because the plants really require all those different wavelengths to be successful. The other thing that's really important with grow lights is that color temperature. So generally grow lights, I think they perform the best when they're at 5,000 Kelvin. That's a really sort of mimicking sunlight's very white light, but they even drop down almost to 3,000 K, which is much more conducive to sort of human mood setting. So you have a lot of flexibility with grow lights in terms of the types of light and sort of mood setting that can happen. But I can't stress enough how absolutely critical lighting is, especially if you're thinking about incorporating automated watering systems. It's sort of a fool's errand to do that without also thinking about the lighting. And so there's different apps you can utilize to sort of pair irrigation with lighting, right? And thinking about setting these lights up on a timer. Again, once you understand how much light a plant is receiving, you can actually start to think about how much water it should be receiving and how it's going to transpire that water. And I think something really important to know about grow lights is that they generally have to be on for 10 hours a day. It doesn't necessarily have to be on during the day, it can be on at night. So plants do have the ability to go binaural and sort of go off during the day and on at night. So a lot of our sites where we have really large scale installations, we actually have the lighting system set to go on at night. So during the day when the space is occupied by humans, maybe it has some nice accent lighting and it's just kind of normal lighting. And then at night, the grow lights come on and it's really intense lighting. And that's the light that the plants are using to actually photosynthesize and grow. And I think one of the really big takeaways I would say and the benefit of this is growth over time, right? So there's a financial benefit to thinking about incorporating technology, but it's also an aesthetic benefit because you really can get amazing growth over time. And that comes down to that idea of consistency, right? It's consistency. It's certainly with our houseplants and everything we do. If someone takes a vacation, you forget to water, you overwater, you underwater, all those little points of stress end up degrading the plant over time. And that's one of the big things about technology, right, is that it's very, very consistent in its delivery. And so that's how you can unlock amazing growth over time. And this is a texture of a sky bridge we did for Etsy. You can kind of see it was gorgeous day one, don't get me wrong, it's beautiful, it's in its Etsy orange, lovely, but you really start to unlock those benefits of biophilic design once it starts to grow into the space, because that's what humans really respond to. That's not even necessarily plants, although we love the plants. What really tickles our brains is when we see a new leaf unfurl, when we see a blossom blooming, when we see change over time. That's a really big impactful thing. So especially in a building where people may be coming and going, leaving and coming back, if you can show that growth over time, that's when people start to respond and have those really positive feelings about the space. And I can tell you, people who work at Etsy, they're like, it's an amazing company. This is an incredible space to work in. They have no problem with return to work attendance because the space is so incredible and it feels so amazing to be there. And for us, from a horticultural perspective, it's actually really easy to take care of it, right? Because it's automated. We can remotely monitor this. We can make sure the system's operational. The team goes in, they're really just checking plant health, but it really makes it easier for us to do these very large scale installations. And that's it for me. So thank you guys for listening. Some, tips and techniques about how to automate plant care.